I'm Christopher Kenner. I'm the CEO of Brand Advance Group, which is a group of companies, first being Brand Advance, which is a diversity media network. Then we have Sentiment, which is a sentiment analysis sort of insights and data company. DECA, which is a diversity media consultancy. And then Cultural Intelligence, which is a platform used by agencies to do more inclusive marketing and data and insights and planning and strategy, etc. But all of them, that was all the fancy bit. All of them really are just with the aim of making sure that marketing's done properly, reaches everybody equally, everyone in society, see them represented in the creative, put it in the media that they actually read, not mainstream media that we're told that we're all reading, but we're not. And that's really, that's it in a nutshell.
I think and this is probably the reason why Solarflow was so interested in talking to you, was because D&I is a really important part of how businesses are working now. And it's also not just because it's something that you need to tick a box on. I think brands are starting to see how it can genuinely, from a commercial perspective, make sense to them as well. So it'd be really good to understand from Brand Advance Group side of things, like how that works from a commercial point of view, how having a D&I inclusive agenda can really help brands.
Yeah, I think I'd even challenge using the word D&I, marketing. Let's look at the ethos of marketing. Marketing is to sell said product or service to as many people as possible. Make them want it, make them need it, make them think that they're going to look better or be better or smell better by having it. That's it. That's the ethos of marketing. That's what every client asks us to do, whether they're coming to use to do it in a very tech and innovation way, if they're coming to Brand Advance to do it through media and creative. That's all. They're asking us to do the same thing, get my product in front of as many people as possible and make them want it. Now, nowhere in that did they ever say, actually, just give it to the straight white people? Or nowhere in there did they say, that there's a certain part of society that I don't want you to sell it to. So us as marketeers, it's our job, no matter where that is, whether it's through innovation, whether it's through media, whether it's through creative, brand safety or whatever, our job is our remit by our clients is to remove all the barriers we can so that, back to ethos, we can sell their brand to as many people as possible. So, D&I is the word we use, and it's how the industry's talking, but actually we don't sell D&I, we just sell marketing done properly. Marketing should sell to me as a black gay guy as much as it sells to you, Jay, as much as it sells to anybody else, so that's the whole point of marketing.
We're still quite a new company in terms of we've only going for like 18 months. We're a growing company, which is fantastic. But when it comes to hiring processes, I think within our industry, it's a challenge for us. I think particularly if you look on the technical side, when we're hiring developers or 3D artists, it is still a very white male driven industry. Is there something that you've come across as well? And if so, how are you looking to overcome it?
Yes, we have. Whether it's in technology or in marketing, it is a male white industry, not so bad in marketing on female, but definitely, LGBT, disability, religion, and race are all difficult demographics to ensure that you're looking in when you're hiring. How do we get around it? We find people in other industries that have transferable skills and we bring them across. So in the last 12 months, we've probably hired about 110 people since the beginning of COVID till now. And we need, because of what we offer as a service, and I believe in the authenticity of your offering. So make sure the very people that you're working with clients to reach are sat at the table talking about how to reach them. You know what I mean? So we just, you sort of, yeah, there's that moving people across, training them up, getting involved in, we're involved and help fund a thing called the Brixton Finishing Academy. We've funded lots of other initiatives, or sponsored lots of other initiatives. So bringing up that next run of the ladder as well. And just looking past your sort of 6 degrees of separation, i.e. your LinkedIn is most, and by your, I don't mean yours, Jay. I mean yours as in the proverbial people on the other side of listening to this. But where do you normally look? And then go and look in the absolute opposite places, where does an ad get posted to? Is it on LinkedIn and a few other places, and that's it? In your industry, I know I'm on a Slack channel for it's the LGBT developers channel called Out in Tech, and there's 26,000 people in the UK on that Slack channel in the looking for jobs part. So they're definitely there. I'm also part of the Black Network, and that again is probably in the UK 10, 20,000 people that come from different development, from marketing, etc. So
I think that's just sort of, I think that's a really sort of flipping it around. Like, that's a really interesting challenge from our side. I think as a company who are growing as well, we believe that this sort of agenda it's an important thing to be developing internally. I think at the same time, like you've mentioned there, 2 resources, which like legitimately you're like, wow, that's an absolute gold mine. I think, speaking honestly, as you're right, someone who, when you think we need to hire a developer, I go into my LinkedIn network and I think, who have I worked with in the past? And I will reach out to my traditional channels. Flipping that dynamic around, and this is quite an interesting way of thinking about how the likes of Slack and things like that are creating new channels. There's also that potential barrier to entry where, for example, let's say there is an LGBT developer channel. That's fantastic. In terms of an access point of view, what's the approach for someone who isn't from that circle to go, hi, I want to be part of this? Are the criteria to be met, or is there something like, what are those barriers that can be flipped around that might create a natural reticence for people to want to get involved?
Yeah. I think it's a really good point, actually. I mean, the one thing about these fantastic pools is you need to know that the pool's there. Do you know what I mean? You can't just type into Google and that Slack channel appears. It doesn't. You need to know where it is. Someone needs to send you a link and an invite, and then you're in. There is no barrier to entry as long as, we're friends. I'm on it. I send you a link. You're in. But I think for now, in answer to that, for now, people like myself are going to need to talk about these resources, post them in blogs, stick them in articles when we're getting interviewed. Otherwise, how would you know? Like, Jay, you could never know. I
think that's a really exciting opportunity, and I think this is a really good example as to how simple it is to actually open up these new channels of conversation and these completely different resources that people wouldn't be aware of if they weren't having those conversations. I think, like, another thing that people will be keen to avoid, and that might hold people back, is this, like, I call it like hello fellow student syndrome. Like, the Steve Buscemi thing where he dresses up, he's in his 40s and he dresses up as a student and he's like, yes, hello fellow students type thing, and it feels disingenuous and insincere. I think that's something that can hold people back as well, that feeling, like a feeling of not belonging or invading maybe a community that's doing its own thing independently. I think that dynamic as to how you, like, everyone wants skills at the end of the day. I think most intelligent companies would not have an issue with hiring based on gender, sexuality, ethnicity, ability or disability or things like that. It's just the reticence around how you approach these issues and how you start those conversations and those dialogues. And I think that's how you approach those challenges. It'd be something, it'd be good to hear your thoughts on how, from someone who maybe wasn't from that background, how you'd approach that and how you'd recommend to other people to do the same.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we all have to admit, all of us on this journey, is this is an awkward journey. It is awkward. We're friends, so this isn't an awkward conversation. But, the topic, I'm sure, is as awkward for you as it is for me. It's awkward to us both in different ways. You know, I get frustrated because I've been on the other end of privilege, being unprivileged, you know. Whereas you're get frustrated because it's not really been something you've worried about because you weren't racist or homophobic. So you were just going through life just, you know, everyone, I am open. I would work with any of you, you know, as long as you're not a fool, then I don't mind working with you. I didn't swear there, so you don't need to.
I've heard that's very good.
But I think, so we have to admit the first stage before you can get anywhere on this journey is just admit you're going to have some awkward conversations. You're going to need to do some things that just feel a little not unnatural, but you're going to have to make an effort. And by make an effort, I mean you've got to tip the scale in the other way to then come back and it to be even, you know. The scales, we can all agree, the scales have been tipped in favor of being white and straight. That's society, and that's nobody's fault. And we can all gob off on panels and stuff as saying, well, I think it's their fault, and I think the government should have done more, or do you know what I mean? Or my ex-boss should have done more. But really, that's just society. You know, I think we need to admit that things like a one-day unconscious bias course, even though they're all good, is not going to change everything about you that you've learned all your life. You know, all the subconscious biases that you've seen. You know, even our industry has things like a blacklist is bad, a whitelist is good. You know, if you do a bad thing, you've got a black mark against your name. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are just simple things, but actually they're conditioned in your mind to, oh, black man, maybe he's bad. Because you've just been conditioned through life for lots of different things. That was just one example. So we need to tackle them. And then I think, how do you sort of just go for it? There is no, if I knew the answer to authenticity, I'd be a whole lot richer and I would just sell it and go and sail off on my yacht. You know, authenticity, whether it's a company wanting to now change the way it's bringing on new staff, you know, how can I authentically now go and hire people? Authenticity just comes from doing the same thing over and over again so that everybody says, oh yeah, they do that all the time. That's authenticity. There's no course you can do. There's no blog you can write. There's no podcast we can do that all of a sudden makes either of us authentic. Just talking about and living what we're talking about, the same thing over and over. And that's what companies need to do, you know? So just keep trying, put the policies in place, because diversity is where everybody's at the moment as companies. You know, we're starting to be more diverse. But actually, you've all got something that Brand Advance has been struggling with for a year, and that's inclusion. Diversity is the easy bit, you know, go and find them, train them, bring them in, making them want to stay and having a room. At the moment, companies run easily because everybody is pretty much the same of the sameness, and they all sit in the same office and they don't really bicker because they all hang around and do the same things. Do you know what I mean? Once you've got an office with 16 races and, you know, 4 or 5 sexualities and 3 different gender, what's the word? Gender, you know, you've got male, female, and non-binary. Totally lost the word there. But anyway, you know.
We're all learning, Chris. We're all on a journey.
Yeah, we are. And then you've got 4 or 5 different religions, and you've got your Christian or Catholic employees saying, why do them get to, you know, I would like extra breaks because the Muslims get to pray 3 more times a day than us. I pray at home, but I feel like I'm being disadvantaged because I don't pray in work time. Whereas do you know what I mean? Like things like that you've got to, that's the next stage. That's the big wave that everyone's going to go through next.
I think it's really interesting. And that's probably thinking like beyond the short-termism of, okay, cool. So our workforce, if we had to put on a pie chart, let's make sure there's more segments on the pie. The challenge that comes after that is actually the challenges of how you integrate these different types of people who've probably got different lifestyle choices, but lots of different things to consider that could impact the way they work in general, how you actually integrate them to make sure you're maximizing the value of the staff member, and also the staff member is feeling integrated so they can give the most back. And that's probably a challenge that, again, talking about the journey that Solarfare are on, that we don't even consider there. The minute you go, okay, great, well, that's good news that we're going to hire someone who's non-binary, or we're going to hire someone who's got this religious background. Oh, wait a second, we've got a client call that's happening at this time. Oh, but they've got prayers at that time, so they can't attend. And making sure that doesn't become a friction point. It becomes something that the infrastructure of the company maybe doesn't. I think embrace is probably the wrong word, and you can get a little bit too lovey-dovey. Go, oh no, rainbow, wonderful, it's all great, but to tolerate and adapt's the right word, to make sure that everyone feels like they're part of things, there's understanding, and there's a sort of feeling of empathy around how that builds up. So that's really interesting, and something I hadn't even thought about.
The rise of the conscious consumer, it's already happened, and that has been accelerated by COVID. We all know every brand can be took away from us. We just need the basics, a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, somewhere close, or an Aldi, or I'm not publicly choosing any supermarket over the other.
They're all good for their own reasons.
They're all good for their own reasons. And I wouldn't only name our clients. I just but any supermarket, we can live with just that. I have learned to live without Soho House. It was hard. I had withdrawals, but I can do it now. And we've turned low paid, low skilled workers. We all talk of them now. They're called key workers. It's our job not just to do what they ask, but to advise them on the best thing to do. You do it from an innovation point of view, but like we said, we want to make sure that people get something out of this, and we get something out of our chat. I would even challenge, is any piece of code a well-written piece of code if it was only written by one member of society or one demographic in society? Most of the problems, so with big tech at the moment, is it all got written in Silicon Valley and then given to the rest of the world, and it's biased to most of us. We've worked with Facebook, and Facebook had a problem where the Facebook algorithm meant that nurses got put in front of females and doctors got put in front of males. And they were saying, we want that to stop. We believe in gender equality, but our algorithm just won't do it. And, a bit, because society has been uneven, algorithms and things like that are just going to learn. They're just nuts and ones. They're just learning what's happening. And there are more doctors as males as females.
So I think there's a couple of really good points made there around the idea that you've kind of got this pincer movement happening where you've got the commercial side of things, which is that it just makes sense to be doing this, backed by this agenda that's happening that, we should be doing this, plus the consumers are telling us to do that. What that leads to, I guess, is when you've got two tectonic plates pushing against each other, you can get an eruption from that. And I think what we're seeing, and what I've seen, is examples of brands getting it wrong as well, where you have this moment where you go, oh shit, we need to talk about this. What's important? Oh, NHS. Let's do an NHS thing. And brands can get it wrong. So I think, can you think of any sort of examples of where maybe brands and agencies, because by the way, everything that brands do tends to be driven by the agencies that fed them that. Yeah. Examples, whether specific or generic, as to where maybe brands and agencies are taking the wrong approach with how they approach their experiences and how they bring this side of things into focus.
Yeah. Well, so to carry on your analogy, two tectonic plates hitting, the same action can be viewed in two ways. One, it is this devastating volcano eruption that ruins what was there already. Or two, it is the rebirth of the planet, and the lava comes down and you actually get a whole new piece of world that was never there before, that can start afresh and be beautiful. You get them two things. Now, brands can do one or two things. They can become part of this devastation, or they can become part of the flourishing new world. Brands that have become part of the devastation, and I'm going to use them because they've done so much right as well. But the government's campaign for COVID that showed women in different parts of the house bloody cleaning. Do you know what I mean? And I'm saying that not to slate the agencies that did it, because they've done a lot of campaigns where they've done well, you know, like they really have. But and the spend of where they're putting money and making sure that everyone, all the publications that reach out, all the little niche communities is being spent in. So they've done good. But, you know, when you make a boo-boo like that, you make a, you know, and that was a clanger, like, you know, and then we all know more famous ones like Pepsi Max and the Kylie Jenner Black Lives Matter march, you know, taking the privileged white girl and making her head the Black Lives Matter march. And there's 101 reasons what might have happened there, but there's one thing that all of them have in common. They didn't ask enough people from that demographic, is this right? If any of these clients, you know, whether it's the agency, whether it's the client when they got the work back from the agency before signing it off, whatever, if they'd have asked, you know, if Pepsi had asked enough Black people, do you think we can have Kylie Jenner at the head of the Black Lives Matter march? I know what the answer would have been because I know what my answer would have been, you know?
But I wonder how much of it, flipping it around, like I think if we take an optimistic viewpoint and how it's approached, I don't think at any point with the Pepsi advert, anyone would have gone, oh yeah, well, this makes sense. No, no Black people. Let's just get like she's got the followers. That's what we need, the followers. It almost feels like there's a certain, if you don't have that representation at the decision-making level, whether it's on agency or brand side, you're going to have decisions made that aren't deliberately incorrect decisions. They're just ones that you don't even think about it. Let's decide, okay, what we're going to do. We're going to animate a house. Okay, well, each of the rooms will have people in. Okay, well, we'll have 5 of each. Okay, well, just pop them in. So, yeah, the women, yeah, kitchen, yeah, garden, yeah. Okay, that all looks good to me. Do you agree? Yeah, that all looks good. Whereas if you actually have that representation around the table, straight away you'll probably have people say, wait a second, do you not think there's a chance that people might think this? And if you've got it at the core, those mistakes are going to be made less and less and less. And that's, I think, flipping around as to why this is so important, just to avoid that potential uproar around something.
We have a simple thing. It's called our 7/10s rule. And, you know, every time we say it to a client, it's hailed and agencies are like, can we use that as well? And it's really simple. And, you know, sometimes I'm sort of amazed at the reaction it gets. Oh, that's really good idea. We basically, any piece of creative before it leaves Brand Advance or Decca or Sentiment gets shown to at least 10 people from that demographic. If 7 or more say it's okay, it leaves our door. If any less than 7 say it's okay, then it doesn't go. You know, I got the idea from watching, what's it called? The zombie one with Brad Pitt.
World War Z.
World War Z, because in that film, that's why Israel built a wall around Israel, because they had a board of 10 people. And if 7 or more thought that the improbable could become probable, they did an action and they built the wall. And that's what I got it from, right? Literally from that movie. I implemented it within Brand Advance. And now it's one of our most used and bought services. People will just pay us to, you just run that for your 7/10s, just so we can just double check. Like anyone can do a 7/10s. You just need to make 10 Black friends, 10 friends that have a less ability, 10 LGBTQ plus. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay.
And I think that's a really good point in terms. A lot of it is, I think, when you deal with a very complex issue, it's very difficult to deconstruct things, and it is still a very, very complex issue. And the 7/10 rule is, it's not a perfect solution. There's going to be like, oh, that won't work every time. There's certain times, but if you can put simple structures in place at the ground level that just go, okay, here's our ideal structure that as a bare minimum, we need to follow this every single time. Everyone can follow structures from that side of things. I think that's a really important, these initial steps, these baby steps that brands and agencies can be taking to make sure they're avoiding those things that can potentially cost them reputation, money, sales, all those things that are obviously we don't want to lose customers. No, well, make sure you do this thing that's going to avoid you being called out in front of millions of people through social media from that side.
Yeah. And I think brands, you know, again, you know, I think we put a lot on the brands, us as the services that we provide to them, we should suggest this to brands. We should, it's our job. We are paid. We're in the marketing world, we're paid quite well, really. I don't mean personally, I mean as like the job for the job that we do, marketing budgets, etc. I think it's a fantastic industry from the innovation side, from your side right through to the media, and there's some and the creative. There's some fantastic minds. There's some great innovation. It's always moving forwards. And we all do some fantastic jobs for our clients, but for some reason, when it comes to the simple things, the bread and butter things, like getting something checked by the very people that are depicted in it, we seem to miss it. It seems to slip through, all this fantastic innovation, and where a client can come to a company like yourself and say, I want to skydive off my tower, and I want people to be able to do that, or they could come to us and say, we want a media plan that truly reaches every demographic in this country. And we want creative that reflects over the next 12 months. We can all do that. But for some reason, as a sector, silly, simple things are missed, are put on a back burner. This conversation, I mean, really, Jay, and we shouldn't be having this conversation, not really. Like, I'll obviously chat with you any day, but what are we talking about? Like, what are we actually, I don't know how longer we've got, but let's make sure that we level with everybody. We're talking about something that should be ground zero, reaching people with advertising. That's ground zero, making sure that you don't offend full races or religions or people with a certain sexual orientation. Having a workforce that truly reflects the very city that your office is sat in. These are all ground zero. They're not aspirations. They should have happened yesterday, not strive for tomorrow. So, yeah.
I think one of the exciting things around society now is that we're becoming, I think, thinking again from like marketing advertising, we're becoming more dehomogenized all of a sudden through social media. You have a voice, you have an equal voice, and potentially more than an equal voice, regardless of your sexuality and your background, etc. And all of a sudden, again, from a commercial point of view, you are potentially thinking, shit, like, I need to think of something that is going to be inclusive, or that isn't going to be offending or ignoring certain sex, because commercially it makes sense. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's been put under the microscope faster than it would have done otherwise, because there's that visibility on everything, and that is the opportunity as well. I think if brands and agencies do things well, there's a huge opportunity there to be reaching a client base that previously you wouldn't have been able to get in touch with. You flip that round at the same time, though, and if you do it wrong, there's a chance that you can completely ostracize a whole area of society as well. And I think that's the balancing act that there is there for sure.
You've hit the nail on the head. Something that I always say, the Brand Advance Group and all the companies and all we do with our clients, whether it's Unilever or L'Oreal or Google or Amazon or all the clients that we work with day in, day out, GSK, etc. We don't do cultural marketing. We don't do D&I. We just give them extra reach. It was reach that they weren't reaching yesterday, and we're going to help them reach it there today. Because for far too long, everybody's been going for the same section of consumer. And actually, people have been struggling to make any more than 10% growth. Brands have been struggling for a long time now to get above 10% growth, to find that fast growth bit, Only when a new sector comes along does it grow really fast, and then it plateaus and they can't find any more. And that's because everybody's vying for that ABC one, because everybody's been told that's the perfect consumer, and this is the perfect media channel to reach them, and this is the perfect creative to reach that, reach. That's all it is. It's extra reach. We have opened, we haven't come with anything special. There's no secret, algorithm in our technology or anything like that. It's just, we say, actually, if everybody's going for over there, and if over there is point A, well, we're going to help you try and go to point B and point C. And then because point B and point C have not been advertised to 12 times for them to take note of an ad, because I think they say you've got to see an ad 12 times before you actually take it in. So, because they haven't had this bombardment of 147 times you see an out-of-home screen and all the digital and mobile and all of that, or immersive as well, because they've not been subjected to that. It's like this new consumer, they've not been marketed to as much as everyone else in society. So they're even susceptible to your rubbish marketing. They're really susceptible to the good marketing, but actually even the mediocre stuff, they're susceptible to, because they just haven't had it. Nobody's put a piece of creative with a family, a black family shopping at Sainsbury's and talking about Christmas. And do you know what I mean? That's
the opportunity moving forward. So I think if you say traditionally, let's say we looked at B and C, like these used to be your core audiences. We've now got a whole new audience that we can be working towards. I think the goal moving forward is to create something where it's something which is acceptable to everyone, that everyone doesn't care. People don't care whether it's a gay couple or a black family or someone in a wheelchair. It's just good content, and I think that should be the goal. But at the end of the day, it's hard to do, and it needs everyone to get involved in terms of changing that. I think one question that we've got, which actually is on the list of questions in a way, is around, like, with these new technologies, what are the potential risks and the potential rewards of using these new technologies, and how can we avoid making mistakes? So I think a couple of good examples are talking about artificial intelligence and it having bias. So I know there was the piece around AOC and how when it tried to complete the picture, it put her in a bikini and things like that. And the same around, nurse equals female, doctor equals male. Yeah. I think there's other examples, such as virtual reality, when the headsets have been built for people, and there's elements which are more difficult, like getting it over turbans and the like, and people who are short-sighted. How do you counteract that? What are the sort of key risks that you think of that maybe would make Brand Advance and the Brand Advance group reticent to be using the sorts of technologies that Solarflare work with?
Oh gosh, okay, that was a big lead up to a really simple question.
Ollie's going to edit that down to a nice simple question. It'll be great.
What do I think? You've said one, like the immersive technologies are really good as long as you've got 20/20 vision and you can fit it on your head. But they're not the only immersive technologies. So that's always going to be one. I think technology can be used, especially, it can actually be the opener for, people with less ability to be able to enjoy something, because technology can be programmed to change for the user. Do you know what I mean? So whereas a book is a book, and so an ad in a magazine is an ad in a magazine. An ad on your TV, you can either see it or you can't. You can stick some subtitles on it, etc. But technology, I don't think there's a barrier, honestly, Jay. I think actually innovation, Brand Advance hasn't pushed it enough, because we've been doing trying to get clients just across the line with the basics. But the next wave is actually, in immersive brand experiences, because people are going to want to get back out, and these vulnerable or these communities, vulnerable communities, non-vulnerable communities, but all of them, one thing that all of the communities, whether it's LGBT, whether it's Muslim, whether it's the Black community, or whether it's a community of people that are less abled, one thing they've all got in common is they all want to get outside and start meeting other people and experiencing things and touching it and seeing it outside of what we've been stuck in for a while. So I think there's a real, I'll flip it back round, and rather than trying to think of something that's a barrier, I would say the opportunity is now immense, because technology is going to be, has always been the medium that can allow the blind person to have the exact same experience as the Muslim person and as the LGBT person. You know, technology, it can adapt for each. It can give a different version of the experience, but it can be the same piece of technology that does that, and it can be the same team from your side, Jay, that can program that and work with a client and say, okay, so that's who you think is your main customer, but actually, what about if this person B comes along? Because person B gives you access to what we've just said, which was that group B, that's your extra reach. And actually, let's chuck in person C as well. You know, person C will give us access to that. And so, yeah, I think I'm sure technology and immersive technology has been hammered, and in some ways it's actually been the one thing that people can still do. You know, the online version, I'm sure, has been good. The brand experience, getting lots of people to stick the same thing on their head outside, has obviously died a death for the last 8 months, and is going to come back, but it's going to come back with a vengeance. I mean, bloody hell, pretty much every festival we've got in the country sold out in 3 hours or something. Like, literally, people just dying to get out. And when we say people, we mean every section of society. And when we say every section of society, we talk, that is diversity, because diversity is us. We, you know, you are diverse to me. You know, you might be from the demographic that gets an absolute hammering every time there's a diversity panel. But, you know, actually, to me, you're the most diverse person I could meet, because you're the absolute, well, no, we're both male, so you're not the absolute opposite to me, but, you know, like, the way we look, you being a white guy, me being a black guy, our upbringing has been a lot different, you know. So yeah, I think I've done a whole politician thing and not actually answered your question, but I'm going to turn it into another thing, which is, I think, the opportunity. You know, I look forward, and I really hope, and you know, I'll always be pushing it, that our clients and Brand Advance gets to work with Solar Flare to really see the fruition of this opportunity, which is, clients have got a lot of money now, because people didn't stop spending. They just stopped walking down the high street. They still spend. And actually, you know, there's 145 billion extra quid in bank accounts right now. I've read it somewhere that, you know, compared to this time last year, there's 145 billion quid in savings that wasn't there this time last year. People are going to need to spend that on brands that I'm going to spend till I drop, quite literally. So, you know, that's an opportunity for brands to work with innovation and to work with at the same time, work with companies like Brand Advance, bring them two together to create something spectacular that truly everybody can enjoy, and really shows that that brand or service or whatever it is for everybody. I think that's where 2021 is going to take us.
I think that's a really nice sort of succinct way of putting it all together from there, is that there's the opportunity to create experiences and content that bring people together, and it doesn't care who you're bringing together. This idea of bringing your content to a diverse audience who will all care about that messaging if it's designed in a manner that is sensitive culturally to all those demographics, that isn't exclusionary in any single way. It is something that no matter who you are, where you're from, what your background is, hey, do you want to go to your local park, use your phone that we've all got, and see an amazing augmented reality gig or a piece of art that's been created digitally, something like that, that you don't care. It doesn't, who cares where you're from? You just go to the park and you see it and you go, fuck, that looks fucking cool. And you snap it and you share it. And the brand sells their products, you have a good experience. And it works for everyone. That's the opportunity, right?
Yeah. That's 2021. That's what we're going to do.
Wow, Chris, that's a really good point. So you probably get this all the time, but if you had to describe in 3 words what the future looks like, what would they be?
celebrating our difference.
That's fantastic. Thanks for your time, Chris. Looking forward to speaking to you more in the future.
Thanks for having me.